Does anyone even logic?
I feel a lot of passion about the lack of parity, the lack of equality of women across all levels. I think the myth is that we have equality, that we have parity.
Absolutely.
I think we still have a long way to go. I think there's been a great strides in terms of women in society, women in organisations. There's been focus on developing women in more senior roles at leadership levels. But we're still a long way to go.
But Belinda says it's because of the choices that women make.
But I think we do have choices, and I think feminism isn't against choice. I think the idea of feminism is that we have the opportunity to choose between what we want to do, whether we want to work, whether we don't want to work, whether we have careers, whether we don't. It's all about choice.
But I mean, there are a couple of things there. I don't think feminism is about choice. It's actually put women in a situation where now we're much more compelled to work than we ever were before. We're forced to go out and leave our children in childcare at much earlier ages. And let's look at the facts. If we look at the facts, who lives 5 years longer? Women do. Who constitute the majority of homeless? About 95% of the homeless and rough sleepers. Men do. In all these different areas, who constitutes about 79% of the suicide rate? Who makes up who gets sentenced for longer times? Men do. It's hard. Who gets less funding on healthcare? Men do. It's hard to find one area where women are disadvantaged
Sarah
in
wants
relation
to come in
to
here,
men.
just sitting.
Milo, Judith Islandson from the Sydney Morning Herald and Age. You talked earlier in this speech about how women essentially don't have anything left to complain about, and there's been a great victory with feminism. I'm just wondering what you make of the continued high rates of domestic violence and sexual assaults around the world. Obviously, Harvey Weinstein's brought that to the fore. We've had a breakfast this morning here at Parliament about domestic violence. One in 3 women over 15 years of age in Australia experience physical violence, 1 in 5 sexual violence. What's your response to that? Is that not something still worth fighting for?
Well, those same studies, which are never quoted in full, show that men are just as bad victims of domestic violence as women are, by the numbers. By the numbers. So I don't think that we have a gendered problem. I think that activists from the left-wing press are determined to present it as a gendered problem, determined to drive a wedge between the sexes. Oh, poor women, victimhood narrative. I don't see it that way. I think there is a violence problem, a domestic violence problem, but all of the serious crimes against women have been falling for decades in the West. Rape rates have been collapsing in the West for 40 years. And instead of being proud of it, you've asked your question, instead of being proud of it, feminists pretend that there is now a rape culture on college campuses where 1 in 3 women is a victim of rape. They're not. To believe that, you would have to believe that college campuses are as dangerous for women as the Congo, where rape is used as a weapon of war. These numbers don't even stand up to common sense scrutiny. You know, they propel these myths about the wage gap, which are based on bogus economics. If you look deeper and further into the numbers, but they're always buried in there somewhere as dishonestly as the pieces are written, you discover that actually, you know, for everything that isn't perfect in our civilization, which comes from the way that men and women are different and interact differently, and sometimes there are differences in the things that one gender has to cope with versus the other, you find actually that men have just as much to deal with as women do. Women are judged relentlessly on their looks, but men are judged relentlessly on how much money they make and how successful they are. Women are... Excuse me, thank you. You know, rape rates have been collapsing for 30 years. We should be hugely proud of that, but feminists lie about it and claim that we're experiencing some sort of explosion of bad behaviour towards women. I think it's probably because they think the rest of us are like their men. They think we're all Wieners, Weinsteins, and Spaceys. Well, libertarian and conservative guys I know are pretty respectful of women. It's your guys who aren't. I understand why Hillary Clinton and Huma Abedin have low opinions of men. They think men are like their husbands.
I think with the election, obviously Trump's election, I think we've gone backwards massively. I think if we can vote, we can have somebody in the White House with views that are so degrading to women, and the comments he's made over the years, not just obviously during the election campaign, but previously as well, which then came to light during the election campaign. If somebody like that, and with his views in the White House today, I don't know what hope we have for the rest of women across the world. the sad thing is that it's not just one politician or one person or one leader. We have so many similar people, similar-minded people all over the world. I mean, look at Philip Davies. His comments around women and equality and so on. He has an issue with women who want equality. He has an issue with women who want...
Do you think those views are prevalent? Do you think those views are common? Widespread amongst men still?
I think that the danger that we have here is that these men have got platforms with which they can disseminate these views to a much wider audience. I mean, last night we had Piers Morgan who took to his Twitter account and he branded feminists, rabid feminists, women that were protesting.
But the protests are really inconsistent, because I've not seen any protests against the Saudi government, even though people know that for years women have not been allowed to drive or do anything.
Scotty has joined us now. Hi, Scotty. Thanks for coming in. Just give us your verdicts, in essence here. Is male superiority, is it confined to an anachronistic corner of our gender, or is it hardwired into the male brain?
I think it's much darker than that. I think it's much sinister than that. I think men in this country, and let's talk about this country, men are socialised to be a hegemonic version of masculinity. So they're told they have to be violent, that they have to dominate, that they are to be leaders. And we've created cultures that endorse that. And so we're witnessing the effects of that. And I think what's really important to say when we're looking at that short film, which is quite a light-hearted look at some horrific things that have come to light in the last couple of weeks. But this idea that somehow that these have just emerged, that these thoughts have just come out, like, women have been telling us for decades this stuff's going on. And so we've got to understand that there's going to be this rage, there is going to be this anger and this backlash, that all of this conversation is about, oh, let's say sorry, oh, you know, oh, my daughters, or yes, it's now time to listen to women. No, women have been saying this for a long time.
Yes, they have.
It's disgraceful.
They have.
It's embarrassing, actually, that we've got like prolific Hollywood film stars who are saying it's now time that we listen to women. Actually, we need to do more than that. You know, like, it would be really easy, and in their capacity, to be able to sign contracts in which they see the contracts of other women that are playing alongside them and make sure they're being paid the same
And you don't
amount.
see any signs of attitudes changing? Is it a generational thing to any degree at all?
I think it's far too simplistic. I think my daily experience as a big, fat, queer femme of, like, existing in this world is one of violence, of people taking photographs of me in public space, of trucks veering onto the road so people can shout out expletives at me, of having, like, every day having a series of being ridiculed. In fact, actually, I was on the phone to the non-emergency police line reporting a homophobic hate crime whilst another was taking place to me. That is how much I and other people like me have to deal with. So if we ask if this is generational, no, this is happening. This is actually happening. And what I want us to do is get beyond just saying that, oh, maybe it's just banter, or maybe this is just like what masculinity is about. We've got to start really critiquing this and start looking at it. And I guess that's what I'm trying to do with my artworks around the country, is have conversations that go beyond the echo chamber.
You do what you do with your arts. Have you got anything else by way of a solution or the beginnings of an answer to how to make things better from your point of view?
Well, that's a difficult question, because, you know, like, how is me, who is, you know, to some extent, like, I am a victim of masculinity in a way because of the aggressions that I put up with on a day-to-day basis. Why is it that, like, us, why is it like queer, trans, non-binary people, why is it us who's got to come up with the theories to be eloquent enough to be able to say, this is how we disable toxic masculinity? Actually, this has got to come from within. Men have got to acknowledge their privilege, and I want them to hand over power, and also I want them to hand over some platform. I'm really up for, like, trying a matriarchy. We've done patriarchy for a long time, hasn't really worked.
OK, Michael, what do you think? Because obviously I'm completely enlightened. I don't need to be told about this.
I think I've heard a great deal of rubbish in the last few moments. I mean, men are not trained to be dominant and violent. I was trained to obey a woman who was my leader, who was Margaret Thatcher. And in the present world, we have a female...
Tories love to do that,
we have
don't
a
they?
female queen, we have a female prime minister.
A female queen, a woman who was unelected.
We have a female First Minister of Scotland. We have a female leader of the Conservative Party in Scotland. We have a female
21%.
leader of the Labour Party in Scotland. I just don't recognise the picture you're painting at all.
You don't recognise the misogynies that we're currently experiencing in the world. I can tell you...
And what is more, if there's one thing that has been remarkable about the last 20 years, it has been the emancipation of gay people. We now have gay marriage. We've had... What? Well, we don't have gay marriage?
No, we do have
what do
gay
you say?
marriage. But
You're not saying there's been a transformation?
Yeah. I'll tell you what would be a good idea.
There hasn't been a transformation.
My daily experience.
Scotty,
maybe the woman could talk.
Maybe let a woman get a word. What about that?
Come da porta picchita va bene, se tu la parla miezza americano, quando si fa l'amore sotto la luna, come da bene in capo di I love you, papà l'americano.